Welcome back, focused learners. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through today's explainer. We are taking a really fascinating journey into the mind of one of America's absolute greatest authors, Nathaniel Hawthorne. But we aren't just looking at his words today. We're actually diving into his groundbreaking use of visual identity, how he used visual tools to expose the deeply hidden truths of his characters. It's this brilliant collision of literature, ancestral history, and what was at the time cutting-edge 19th century technology. It all begins with a pretty fundamental question. How do you actually capture a person's true character? I mean, it's a tension we all experience, right? The difference between the deceptive surface appearance people present to the world and that hidden, sometimes much darker, internal truth underneath. For Hawthorne, navigating this tension was an absolute obsession. And as we'll see, he used everything from physical symbols all the way to the literal invention of the camera to strip away the facade. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Hidden guilt, surface identity. 2. Symbols of Puritan identity. 3. Portraits revealing inner truth. 4. The daguerreotypes' unflinching gaze. And finally, 5. The photographic narrative method. Let's kick things off with Section 1, Hidden Guilt, Surface Identity. To really understand Hawthorne's evolution when it comes to visual identity, we first have to wrap our heads around the massive problem he was grappling with. And that is the heavy, heavy burden of inherited Puritan guilt, and just how incredibly unreliable a public facade can be in a society bound by strict moral codes. We have to look at his family tree. In 1630, his ancestor William Hawthorne emigrates to Salem as a pretty bitter persecutor. Then, by 1692, another ancestor, John Hathorne, serves as a judge in the infamous Salem witch trials. This ancestral crime literally haunted Nathaniel Hawthorne. Now, note the leap here. In 1839, the daguerreotype, early photography, is invented. And just shortly after that, Hawthorne publishes his masterworks, The Scarlet Letter in 1850 and The House of the Seven Gables in 1851. He is directly connecting his dark, ancestral Puritan past to this massive technological leap of his contemporary era. See, Hawthorne's characters don't just commit individual sins, they inherit a moral condition. It's transgenerational guilt, it's baggage. So to visually represent this burden of original sin, Hawthorne leans heavily into a technique called chiaroscuro, which is just a fancy word for the stark interplay of light and dark. He uses sunshine to represent the public facade, the socially acceptable exterior, and he uses gloom or deep shadows to represent internal, hidden guilt. It is a highly visual, almost cinematic way to expose the fracture between what a person shows the world and what they actually feel inside. Moving right along to Section 2. Symbols of Puritan identity. Before the invention of photography, Hawthorne had to use physical, historical symbols to expose these hidden realities. And he mastered this technique in The Scarlet Letter. On one side, we have Hester Prynne. She wears the physical, highly visible scarlet A. Now, initially, this is a mark of public shame, right? But she actually transforms it into a symbol of self-definition. Eventually, the townspeople even say it means able. She brings her truth completely to the surface. But on the flip side, we have the Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale. He maintains this flawless public facade, but his concealed guilt is literally burning him in secret from the inside out. I mean, he even goes as far as carving the A into his own chest. I absolutely love this quote from the text. The Scarlet Letter had not done its office. It just perfectly captures Hawthorne's entire point. The physical symbol of the letter was intended by Puritan society to be this static, absolute visual marker of shame. But visual identity isn't static. Over time, its meaning evolved as it revealed a deeper, much more complex truth about Hester's strength and the society's own hypocrisy. The symbol failed its original, rigid job, but it completely succeeded in revealing true character. Which brings us to Section 3, Portraits Revealing Inner Truth. And this brilliantly illustrates Hawthorne's use of art to capture distinct, completely opposing visual identities in his next great novel, The House of the Seven Gables. We have Clifford's painted miniature. It shows soft, tender lips and gentle, voluptuous emotion. It's a really delicate representation of his character. But compare that to the portrait of old Colonel Pynchon. He's a stern Puritan in a skullcap, literally clutching a Bible in one hand and the hilt of an iron sword in the other. Hawthorne is showing us how traditional art was used to cement the legacy and the true nature of a person for generations. Let Hawthorne's own words prove this point. He writes that the painter's deep conception of his subject's inward traits has wrought itself into the essence of the picture and is seen after the superficial coloring has been rubbed off by time. Hawthorne really believed that an artist's intuition could capture a truth-revealing insight. Even as the physical paint fades away, the deeper psychological truth of the subject just remains clear to anyone willing to really look. Next up, Section 4, the Daguerreotype's unflinching gaze. Now we are stepping completely out of the realm of painters and entering the era of a technological leap that acted as this ultimate, almost magical revealer of identity, the daguerreotype. Invented in 1839, it was the first prominent photographic technology. It produced an image on a highly reflective silvered surface. But you really have to understand how people in the 19th century viewed this thing. They didn't just see it as a neat gadget. They viewed it as a mystical phenomenon. They called it the Sun's amanuensis, which basically meant it was dictated directly by the sun, by nature, by God. It stripped away all human deceit and the painter's bias to capture the exact, unedited truth of reality. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly it mirrors Hawthorne's thematic obsession with dual identities. In The House of the Seven Gables, we meet Judge Pynchon. To the naked eye, his surface appearance is totally benevolent. He has a sunny good humor and a supposed openness of heart. But when the camera captures him, the daguerreotype reality reveals a man who is sly, subtle, hard, imperious, and cold as ice. The camera just slices right through his public relations campaign. Holgrave, who is the daguerreotypist in the novel, explains this phenomenon perfectly to the character Phoebe. He shows her the image and says, "The sun, as you see, tells quite another story." He points out that while we think sunlight only depicts the surface, it actually brings out the secret character with a truth that no painter could ever capture. It's the magical power of the camera to bypass the false human smile and expose the dark reality underneath. And our final stop, Section 5, the photographic narrative method. So we've seen how Hawthorne used the daguerreotype within his story, but how did the invention of photography change how Hawthorne actually wrote? Well, it pushed him toward a technique called ekphrasis, which is the detailed verbal description of a visual work of art or scene. Hawthorne stated he wanted to achieve the minuteness of a Dutch picture, referring to those incredibly detailed genre paintings. His evocative prose demanded that the reader stop and behold the scene, with the exact, unsparing scrutiny of a photographer, capturing every single visual detail. So the crucial point is that Hawthorne was actually developing a photographic narrative method of his own. His narrator acts as a detached observer, a stranger capturing a state of distant intimacy. He sympathizes deeply with the subjects, but without intruding personally into the frame. Incredibly, scholars note that Hawthorne pioneered this method decades before actual candid snapshot photography even existed. He's literally prefiguring artists like Walker Evans, who famously took covert, unposed photographs of people in the New York subway just to capture their true, unguarded faces. Hawthorne himself explained this detached approach brilliantly in a letter. He wrote, "I have always shrunk from expressing what was peculiar to myself. I sympathize with them, not they with me." Just like a camera, Hawthorne remains entirely outside of the picture. He removes his own ego so he can impartially and truly capture the objective reality and the internal truth of his subjects. We've seen how Hawthorne used everything from the Scarlet Letter to the revolutionary daguerreotype to expose the truth beneath the facade. But that leaves us with a pretty provocative thought. In our age of instant filters, Photoshop, and highly curated social media feeds, does modern photography still have the power to reveal our true visual identity? Or has the camera just become a tool to create another deceptive surface? Think about that next time you take a photo. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.